Hi everyone, this is Sarfraz from Aristotle Prep, and we are looking at question 121 from the OG13 Critical Reasoning chapter. The stimulus says, the spacing of the four holes on a fragment of a bone flute excavated at a Neanderthal campsite is just what is required to play the third through sixth notes of the diatonic scale, the 7-note musical scale used in much of Western music since the Renaissance. So there is some bone fragment that has been discovered from a Neanderthal campsite, and there are four holes on that bone fragment, and the distance between the hole is just enough to play four of the notes on the diatonic scale, which actually has 7 notes. All right. So the entire flute hasn't been found. It's just a part of the flute that has been found, which has these four holes instead of say 7 holes. So then it goes on to say musicologists therefore hypothesize that the diatonic musical scale was developed and used thousands of years before it was adopted by Western musicians. From this, musicologists have concluded that this diatonic scale was being used by Neanderthals at that time itself. All of this from a bone fragment which has four holes. The spacing between the holes is same as the spacing between those 3 or 4 scales. So now what we have to do is we have to strengthen the hypothesis that yes, the diatonic scale was used by Neanderthals, or that this piece of bone fragment that has been found is actually a part of that diatonic scale, the entire flute. So let's look at the option then. A says bone flutes were probably the only musical instrument made by Neanderthals. It doesn't have to be. They could have made a lot more musical instruments for all you know. Doesn't make any difference. B says no musical instrument that is known to have used a diatonic scale is of an earlier date than the flute found at the Neanderthal campsite. Again, irrelevant whether it's, but the point is whether this particular one that has been found is actually part of that diatonic scale flute or not. C says the flute was made from a cave bear bone, and the campsite at which the flute fragment was excavated was in a cave that also contained skeletal remains of cave bears. So whether the bone is a cave bear bone or not makes no difference. D says flutes are the simplest wind instrument that can be constructed to allow playing a diatonic scale. Still doesn't strengthen the fact that that particular bone fragment is from a bigger flute that was used to play the diatonic scale. So the last option most likely will be the answer, which says the cave bear leg bone used to make the Neanderthal flute would have been long enough to make a flute capable of playing a complete diatonic scale. And this gives you a strengthener because it says, see, you've only found a piece of the bone. So this says the entire bone would have been long enough to play the entire range of the diatonic scale. It's very, very important to understand that you've only found a fragment which can play 3 or 4 of the scales. All 7 scales, to play all 7 scales, the fragment would have to be longer, and this is a piece of that. So E is saying that yeah, the leg bone of the bear is long enough to play all the scales of the diatonic scale, all the tones of the diatonic scale, whatever it is. So this definitely strengthens the argument. So you see, the point with strengthen and weaken is even if the option can give you some small supporting point, that strengthens the argument. E gives you a very small supporting point, does not give you a major support. But yes, it gives you a small supporting point and that strengthens the argument. So remember, to strengthen, anything that even gives you a remote strong possibility can be the answer. To weaken, even if I can raise a very small doubt in your mind, I weaken the argument. So E is the answer to the question. A difficult question for sure. I would give it a 4 on a scale of 5. Have a nice day.